Hello there, True Hanish Whiskey Lore. It is Whiskey Wednesday and time to do a tasting of a whiskey that I recently purchased while I was out in Colorado and had an opportunity to jump around to some distilleries. Went to Leopold Brothers, went to Talnua, went to Boulder Spirits, and this was really an opportunity for me to taste some whiskeys that I hadn't had a chance to up to this point. I'd been to Stranahan's, I'd tasted many of their whiskeys, I'd been to Laws, really enjoyed their San Luis, I think it's San Luis actually, is what I heard when I was there, Valley Rye, and I brought a couple of bottles back with me, packed a big enough suitcase to be able to do it, and so the whiskey that I brought back with me, well, two of them actually, and I will feature the other one from Talnua coming up, they're both peated whiskeys. The other one is a peated pot still whiskey. This is a peated single malt from Boulder Spirits. An interesting time heading to this distillery because Denver had this free transportation, public transportation thing going on, and you can ride the line all the way up to Boulder. So I decided to do that. And it was a nice bus ride. It was raining the whole time I was there. I was already half drenched by the time I got to Boulder, but I decided to get something to eat. I thought, give me enough time to dry off, check my phone. Weather looks good for the next hour and a half. I could jump on the bus, ride around, and be assured of being dry, or I can trust the weather and I can take off and walk all the way across Boulder to get to where Vapor Distillery is, which is the home of Boulder Spirits. So I decided to walk. And what does it do? It rained the entire walk. Luckily, I had a coffee at the beginning to keep me warm, but it was freezing cold. It was like 55 degrees. And what's funny is that was the only day it was in the 50s. Every other day it was in the 90s. And this just happened to be the one day I decided to wear shorts, a short sleeve shirt. Otherwise, I was doing the normal thing and wearing my long sleeve. What a mess. So obviously, you just can't trust weathermen. I remember standing at the corner, rain pouring down on me, going, I want my money back. Whoever's paying these weather forecasters, the weather forecasters should be paying them because they're getting duped. We're all getting duped by these weather people. Anyway, that's my rant for this Whiskey Wednesday. I bought these two peated whiskeys because I am a fan of peat, and this was an interesting way of tasting two different whiskeys with a peat influence. One in Talnua along with pot still. This one tasting something that is made by a man who was born in Scotland, came here with a desire to make single malt whiskey, but who is not really a peat fan. So you would think of all the whiskeys that I tried there, and I tried probably 7, I think, while I was there at least. And then Alistair, the distiller and owner, walked me around and showed me everything, and we chatted about a lot of different things, and that's when he told me, he wasn't a big fan of peat, but he wanted to try to make a peated whiskey that would appeal to him. So this is where you get into that thing where whiskey doesn't always taste as advertised. In other words, this one is not going to come at you, even though it says it's peated, there is smoke there. There's definitely smoke there. But it is much more infused into the whiskey's character rather than being a standout piece. And it's definitely not heading towards those medicinal whiskeys of Islay, but instead towards the more heathery Speyside kinds of whiskeys. This is 2 years old. It is aged in a barrel, new barrel. Now this is a big difference between single malt whiskeys that are made overseas and what he's doing here, which is he is basically aging in new American oak. And a number 3 char is a lighter char, avoiding those higher chars of Kentucky. So the idea is it should not be quite as impactful during its short term, although you can see how dark that is, and that is 2 years plus in terms of its age. So got a lot of color in that in a very short period of time. I love that they actually put the char number on the front of the bottle. The whiskey is proofed down to 46% using Arapaho Glacier Malt. Don't hear that very often. So on the nose on this, you get a little bit of heathery, matchstick, foresty smoke. Very light. If anywhere I pick up those barrel characteristics on this, it's probably just a little bit of nuttiness and kind of maybe a vanilla pulling through. From the distillate itself, I do pull in that smoke character, and it is kind of like smoke from a distant fire. Remember that song? Gosh, test myself now. I've forgotten who that is, who did that song. I'm playing it in my head, 70s track. Someone will tell me, I know, below, and I'll go, I should have known that. I'll probably think of it before the end of this. So yeah, I mean, the smoke is actually there. It almost has a little cocoa note to it as well on the nose. And I pull a little cola note in on the nose. Usually cola is something that I get more on the palate, but on this, I'm tending to get it on the nose. Cheers. I remember when I was walking around the distillery after having, because I carried a glass of this around with me as I went. And I remember remarking to myself that this had like a really nice dark chocolate and kind of marshmallow characteristic to it, with a little bit of that campfire coming through on top. Something I hadn't really experienced since, what was it, B521 Elijah Craig, the barrel proof. That's what really made me like that whiskey, was this marshmallow s'mores kind of thing that was coming through. And I get a bit of that on the palate here. But what really sticks with me at the end is Count Chocula straight from the box. Have you eaten Count Chocula cereal or any of those, chocolate cereal, heavily chocolated cereals? That's kind of what I'm tasting at the end of this whiskey. It just stays on the palate. Now there is the youth comes through on this, what seems like a gingery note, but it doesn't necessarily have gingery flavor. It just has the sting of ginger to it. So it's not necessarily a peppery note. To me, a gingery sting is a little bit more subdued, but it still has some impact to it. You definitely know it's there. And so I think that's where the youth in this whiskey shows. It'd be very interesting to see if a whiskey like this was maybe aged for 2 years in a number 3 char and then moved over to, say, a ex-peated whiskey, and maybe not barrel, and not necessarily like a Lefroy, because a lot of people use Lefroy barrels or a Islay barrel, but instead maybe find would be interesting to do like a Ben Romick, maybe pick up a little bit of a sherry flavor in there. But I'm thinking more like trying to find something that is an American bourbon barrel that has aged a Speyside smoky whiskey, then bring that over and just give it another year sitting in that barrel to see what other character it pulls in. Now, of course, with someone who owns the company and doesn't necessarily like peated whiskeys, maybe that's not something that will be attempted, but I do think that would be really interesting because it feels like this needs a little bit more time in the barrel, but I don't want to kill off that really cool kind of cereal chocolate note that I'm pulling in. And the more time it's sitting in that barrel, I think the more that could potentially disappear. Needs something to maybe enhance it, preserve it, and bring it in while also letting the rest of the whiskey round itself out. Where I'm at with this one, but like I say, I was impressed enough by it that I had to get myself a bottle of it and pack it up in the suitcase and bring it home. So that is Boulder Spirits. Have you had it? Have you had anything from those guys? I'm telling you, I have heard so much about them in the weeks leading up to my trip to Denver. I was like, I gotta go. I really have to go because everybody's talking about them and I have absolutely no idea about their spirits because I can't find them around here. So there you go. I have given it a shot and hopefully you have too. Thanks for watching. Please give me a thumbs up if you enjoyed the video. Definitely subscribe if you want to watch more of these down the road. And until next time, cheers and Slainte. Count Chocula.